Hello, hello, and welcome to the Black Girl Iowa podcast. I'm your host, Emily, and I've got a fun episode for you all today. Now, I will forewarn you, this episode does have some suggestive and explicit language. So if you have kiddies around, might not want to let them listen to this one. But overall, it's a great conversation. And this young lady that I had on the podcast is just a breath of fresh air, very enlightening. And I am just so happy to see where she is going in her professional career. So I will talk more about the guest here in a moment and do a formal introduction. But for now, let's go ahead and get into our Black Iowa fact. So, it's one thing to be the first, but to be the first multiple times, in my opinion, cements a legacy that is worthy of praise. So, I'd like to tell you about Luther T. Glanton. He is credited to being the first African American law student at Drake University in Des Moines and the first African American judge, winning the Des Moines Municipal Court election in 1959. Glanton was born in Murfreesboro, Tennessee in 1910. He was the fourth of 9 children and attended Tennessee State University, where he earned his bachelor's degree in 1939. Per the encouragement of his history professor, whom was an alum of Drake University, he applied and was granted admission to the Drake University Law School. During his time at Drake, he was barred from living on campus and eating in the dining halls. Glanton did graduate in 1942. He then served as an intelligence officer during World War II for the U.S. Army. In 1947, Glanton returned to Des Moines, joined a law practice with 3 other Black lawyers, and began advocating for Black Iowans by joining the NAACP Des Moines chapter. He also helped enforce the Iowa Civil Rights Act, which led to the de facto segregation of Iowa. To add to his legacy, Glanton was the first Black assistant Polk County attorney in 1951 and became a municipal judge in 1958. This position led to his appointment as an associate district judge in 1973 and as Iowa's first Black district judge in 1976, a position which he held until his retirement in 1985. Glanton died on July 4th, 1991. He has since been remembered as a proud, generous, passionate father, husband, public servant, loving brother, lifelong friend, and dedicated practitioner, per his law partner, Virgil Dixon. This episode is dedicated to Luther T. Glanton and his determination for creating a pathway for Black Iowans to not only practice law, but to encourage future generations to strive for greatness and advocate for our community and history. I will tell you guys real quick before I get into the interview. I love doing these Black Iowa facts. I will always do my best to try and tie it in with what we're talking about on the podcast. But sometimes I find a nugget of information in our history that I just have to share. And this was definitely one of them. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are Googling who Luther T. Glanton was and just the foundation that he laid for Black people practicing law here in Des Moines and in the state of Iowa. So, we're going to go ahead and get into the interview. This was a really fun conversation that I had, and I will be sure to be back at the end for really my final thoughts on today's conversation. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into the interview. All right, everyone. So let's go ahead and get into the interview. And I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to my guest. She is a Des Moines native that is a pillar of the community and can be seen all over the city. She is a 2018 graduate of the one and only Theodore Roosevelt High School, and she received her Bachelor of Arts degree in political science in 2022 from Simpson College. During her time at Simpson, she received honors, including the Women's and Gender Studies Activism Award, not only in 2020, but also in 2020. And like me, she did received the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Human Relations Award in 2020. I got mine in 2. Her passion for civic engagement includes holding positions with 3 political candidates here in the state of Iowa, including Rob Johnson as fundraising director, Deidre DeGier as deputy finance director, and legislative secretary of state for state senator Isaiah Knox. She is currently the development and donor relations manager for the Des Moines Symphony and Academy. And in addition to her professional and academic accomplishments, she is also serving as her first term as the foundation board member in community events for our alma mater of Roosevelt High School. I'm really proud of this young lady. I'm so happy to have her on the show. Ladies, gentlemen, non-binary friends, I'd like to introduce you to Tatum Clayburn. Tatum?
Hello.
Listen.
Rounding.
First of all, y'all need to know, we literally just spent about 45 minutes before we even hit record talking. So the catch up has been real. It's been great. I had the privilege of meeting this young lady during my time at Simpson, where I was assistant director of admissions. And, you know, it's really awesome to be able to go back to your alma mater and work, but also see students that are just as passionate about their academics and about social justice as Tatum was. So, and then I ran into her randomly at a Deidre DeGier event, and we've basically been in touch ever since. So, Tatum, let's go ahead and just get the interview started. So, tell us about your experience growing up as a Black woman, as a biracial Black woman.
Yes.
Here in the Des Moines area, Iowa, all of those things.
Yeah. So I think a huge part of it has to do with my mom. My mom is the Black parent out of the 2. I don't know who my dad is. So, you know, in the grand scheme of like biracial kids stereotypes, that's like the complete opposite of the basic stereotype. It's, you know, it's like the Black dad, you know, he's doing what he's doing, and then you have the white mom, yada, yada, yada. So I do experience compared to a lot of other biracial people. My mom was never one to act like I was Black per se, because look at me, I'm Casper, I'm damn near
not Casper.
it's like not a crazy thing to say, like I'm not blind. But with that being said, my mom also made it very clear to me that I wasn't completely white, and that I didn't have a white parent, and the 2 women that I had raising me were 2 obvious women of color. And so growing up, it wasn't necessarily on me, it was how I was viewing how other people treated my mom and my grandma from like a quote unquote white woman's perspective, a young white girl's perspective, where I remember going to, I don't know if you remember the old like Get and Go over on like, what was that, like 24th and University, like that old rundown Get and Go all the way down in the Drake neighborhood. I remember going there with my mom one time when I was a kid, because we lived in a duplex like a block and a half over. So we were just on the way home from school or whatever. And I remember this guy called my mom. He said, you know, you're really pretty for a red bone. And I remember being really, really young and looking at my mom, because my mom was like lost her shit on this dude. And I remember seeing it, and I remember going like, what is this? I was like, I don't know what it is. And I remember seeing my mom like break down in the car sobbing, explaining it to me, because if there's one thing that my mom never did, she never sugarcoated things for me. She wanted me to be aware of things, which I appreciate now, because I'm comfortable having tough conversations now. So I do appreciate that she did that. But I think the biggest thing was when I got to middle school, when I was kind of aware that I was the lightest girl in the community that I was living in. I lived in the Drake neighborhood my entire life, pretty much.
Did you go to Callanan?
I did, yeah.
Oh, period, Cougars. Okay.
Yeah. So from the area that I was in, I was one of the only like white girls for a very long time. And then getting into middle school, I was like, okay, I had the quote unquote mannerisms and the accent of a Black girl, but I looked white. And so the same thing happened to my mom when my mom was at Callanan. It sounds weird to say, especially because I feel like if you're a white, you're probably going to look at me and think that I'm white. But if you're a person of color, you're going to ask me like, hey, you got something in you. Like, what is it? I can't really put my finger on it. And growing up, it was one of those things where I was never Black enough for like the Black kids that I was like trying to be friends with. And I was too Black. I wasn't white enough for like the all white kids for a very long time. And so we were talking about earlier about the code switching thing. It wasn't necessarily code switching. It was one of those things where I was just like, okay, this group doesn't want to hear about these things. That group doesn't want to hear about these things. So that's fine. I guess it's not really a problem. And then I didn't really realize kind of what it was like until I got to Roosevelt into high school when Trump was elected. That's when kind of like the rose-colored glasses kind of came off. because it was like, oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Understood. And
Right.
then, so going into college, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, let's just amplify, pour gasoline on everything
Yeah.
that we already have going on. I mean,
Right.
all considered, it could have been there's a lot of other people that probably had it a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
They did have it a lot worse than I did, but I definitely say it shaped me in a way that I didn't, but the way I've never had people question my blackness because I have a black mom. Like there's a sense of like,
okay.
there's a sense of like, there's a sense of like power in my race and my ethnic background because I know it's my mom. And I feel like as a Black culture, it is very maternal. We are a very maternal culture. Like we put women, those are our historians. Like those are the people that like create the family, like, you know. And so, and you know, like in the Black community, it's one of those things. Like I remember growing up, like people in my mom and my grandma's generation would go, "Oh, you're mixed? What, like, who's your mom?" And I tell them my mom, and my mom's like, "Oh, yep, she's Black." Like there was validation in telling people that my mom was the Black one. And I don't think that, I remember like getting into college and telling people that. I didn't realize that people didn't expect that. It's not like because to me growing up, that was common knowledge that like whatever the race of your mom was, that was the race that you were most likely going to be associated with growing up.
Right. And I think you bring up something that I don't really think gets talked about enough, but I have friends and we've kind of had these conversations separately, and it's really just because I want to know. But there is a distinct difference for a biracial child that is raised by a Black woman versus raised by a white woman. And I think it's one of those things where it really gets tied to, as a Black woman, especially if you are dark skinned, you already know you've got strikes against you. So I feel like when you have a child, so your mom already had the foreshadowing of people are going to treat you different. People are going to think that you think you're better than everyone else because you are lighter skinned. And I don't necessarily think that those same conversations are happening in the inverse. And I think in a way, it's like, how could they happen? And I also think too that you could go down a whole other rabbit hole that we're not even going to get into right now on why those conversations aren't necessarily happening. But I really think, because I remember like when I first met you, I met you when my dad came to that BSU meeting. And I remember walking in. First of all, I looked at you and honey, I looked at your nose and I was just like, oh yeah, she one of us. Period. Hands down. Yep. And then you said you went to Roosevelt. And then you said something to the effect of, and oh my God, you said something to the effect of, well, if they don't like it, what are we supposed to do about it? And I was like, oh yeah, she's definitely that girl. Okay, no problem. And I really think that, you know, that again, that really speaks to your mom ensuring that you have the awareness and how your privilege isn't going to look like everybody else's. You know what I mean? And I really like how you said it's not necessarily code switching. It's almost kind of like survival, right?
Exactly. I mean, one of the biggest things that my mom didn't want for me was to be as isolated as she was when she was the age that I was when I was growing up. Because, you know, my mom, she was growing up in like the 80s. And so it was one of those things where like, especially in like, I don't need to give everybody a history lesson here, you know, Google's free. But there wasn't a lot of biracial kids, especially not in Iowa. And so it was one of those things where my mom was probably one of a literal handful of visibly biracial kids in a school full of people who were one whole race.
One or the other. Yeah.
One or the other. And so my mom was very adamant on trying to make me aware of what she went through, but also not trying to write my path, but also making me very self-aware, not to put other people's shoes on my feet when I have a perfectly good pair of shoes already. I was like, you know, like she would compare it to like a pair of heels. She was like, she was like, you know, all of us, as in like Black people, she was like, we're all heels. And she was like, I'm a pair of stilettos. I can't hide the fact that I'm in a pair of stilettos, but you are in a pair of kitten heels. People can hear that you have a heel on, but they're not really going to see it at first glance. So you need to be obvious of that. Otherwise you're going to have more trouble for yourself down the road. And so I appreciate that she did that, because I honestly think that it saved me a lot of trouble down the path. Like it saved me a lot of trouble, like for my generation, like for Gen Z's like culture and like significant, like it saved my ass. Like there's no videos of me saying the N-word on the internet. And like, even if they were, some people would probably be like, that's fine. But, you know,
Right.
for me, like looking at me, a Black person just walking by the street, they're going to look twice.
Yeah,
And so it's
absolutely.
like, I'm not going to be stupid and just like act like my ethnicity and my biracialness is obvious. I remember being in college and learning what a white presenting minority was instead of a white passing minority. And I was like, that's what it is.
Yep. And there is a difference, you know, and I also think too that a lot of these terms, it's really just with the evolution of just our existence even, and then we also have social media and the internet and all these other variables where terms like that weren't necessarily used. Like for me, I didn't know what passing was until college. But then again, you know, growing up in the Black community here in Des Moines, it was never seen that way because for me, if you were biracial, you were Black.
Exactly.
I honestly did not see biracial students or friends or acquaintances, you know, essentially passing. I literally did not know what it was. And then in college, took a class on race and ethnicity, learned what it was. And I was like, oh, wow, people really did that. And I'm just, okay, that's different, right? But I also think you said something that I really think hit the nail on the head in what we're going to talk about. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have Tatum on is because there is just always like this tug of war between Gen Z and millennials. So for those of you that don't know, a millennial is the generation that was born between 19 and 19, okay? Gen Z was born between 1990 and 2000. So I was born in 19. Tatum, I can't believe I'm going to say this. She was born in 2000.
Let's go. Solid number.
And I'm just like, oh my God, like all the things she missed, like, you know, but regardless. So, but I feel like there has just always been like, you know, this push-pull, this tug of war between our generations. And I feel like, first of all, it was very evident in kind of how I went to college, you went to college. So me and Tatum went to the same school. I graduated in 2000, she graduated in 2020. I graduated during the birth of social media. I remember Facebook had came out maybe the year prior, and each school got like a Facebook account, but you had to get kids from your school to create this separate Facebook account for us to get access to Facebook. Okay. Yeah. Oh, listen, I'm a pioneer when it comes to Facebook. Okay. Me and my generation, we were there from the start. But at the same time, then we had Facebook. Then we had MySpace.
Yeah.
I was just talking to a friend about this the other day. We had MySpace, we had Facebook, then Twitter, then YouTube. But for Tatum, probably since you were 10, all of these things were already in place. And so that is just such an interesting outlook on how we kind of grew up. But I guess I kind of want to transition this. We can also kind of talk about college and all those things. I know it's all going to be relevant. But when we think about the fact that we've had this big boom with social media, and there's just such a distinct and drastic difference between our generations. In your opinion, what are some of the difference? Like, why do you think there's such a gap between our generations if really the generations are only a year apart? Like when one starts, it's a year before the next one begins.
Well, I definitely think that emphasizing that 1 year difference is important because, I mean, you just said like how big like the Gen Z gap is, and I would honestly say like I feel like I'm close to being dead smack in the middle of that age range, but I definitely think I'm on the older side of that because I'm a June birthday, so I was in the grade above people. So like I graduated college at 21 instead of 22, you know, graduated high school 17 instead of 18, so you know, but I think that there's a lot of things that we do have similarities on, but there's like a huge and I honestly think a big part of it is that, like you said, I wasn't alive for a lot of things, but with that being said, I've been alive for a lot of shit. Only being 23, I'm fucking exhausted. World events, like once in a lifetime things. Like I am tired. I'm exhausted. I mean, hell, I was just about a year old when 9/11 happened. So it wasn't a good welcoming into the universe, first of all. And that's for a lot of the people my age. Our first like big thing in our lifetimes really it was 9/11. Granted, we weren't conscious for it. We don't remember it happening.
But you were still affected by it.
We were so affected, and granted, we didn't it was one of those things like we didn't really know what we were losing because we weren't there for what preceded 9/11, but so many restrictions happened because of 9/11, granted, for good reason. Kind of, you know.
For good reason.
We could go into reasons as to why, you know, some things, you know, but that's not what this episode's about, so I'm not gonna Anytime. Um,
I love it.
But I think it's one of those things where I mean, growing up for me, a lot of my childhood was just a bunch of traumatic things. And I'd say the least traumatic thing was when Obama was elected. Like, I remember when Obama was elected, it was like
Yeah.
unicorns and rainbows.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't aware, but looking back on it, like there was a housing crisis. The economy was literally non-existent. People couldn't
Yeah.
find jobs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
looking back on it, I was like, wait, my mom didn't really have a lot in the pantry. Like, she didn't really eat a lot. We had a lot of grilled cheese. We had a lot of canned foods. Like,
Right.
these were things that were happening. I remember my mom being hard to take a job. So I really think the biggest thing is that when we, like, our years of coming of age were so restricted, and then right when we were allowed to come of age, at least for my generation, I don't know, people don't talk about this specific moment enough. And I want to,
Lord. Okay,
when
let's go.
I was 18, I turned 18, I was allowed to buy a pack of cigarettes, I was allowed to buy wraps, I was allowed to do all of that. Then the government was like, no, took it away from us. So first of all, you mean to tell me I could vote for the fucking
I can't do these other things.
but I can't have a mango jewel pod? Fuck you. Really? It was like, we've done all of this shit and we didn't even get grandfathered in. And then finally, when we're like, okay, college, we get to do the damn thing. Oh my gosh. And for people younger, like high school, it's like, these are the ages of our lives where we're figuring out, we're coming in to who we are. Boom, pandemic. And then when the pandemic's over and stuff's happening, now I'm shoved into the adult world. Like, good luck, sailor.
Yeah.
Have fun. And so I think that has a huge portion to do with it. Like, we've never been able just to chill. And when we were able to just chill, we were literal children.
Yeah. Now that you say that, that makes a lot of sense. And I really think that social media did have a really significant part in advancing you guys a lot sooner than you needed.
Yeah.
So, for you to be born in the year 2000, I was born in the 80s, 1980s, during the Reagan years. You know what I mean? Like,
this dude in history. Come on now.
Listen, he has a lasting effect on this country. But the thing is, though, so I was born during the Reagan years, but at the same time, my parents are boomers, and so Larry and Doretha are living, they're working. My dad's a teacher, my mom is working full time. So the whole concept of the wife stays at home and the husband goes to work, that was never a dynamic in my family. No, never. But I also think, to a certain extent, between the time I was born until I got to high school, I really feel like I knew what was going on in the world because my parents were always very conscious. They were always really into politics, into, world history, current events and all of those things. And so all of those things that happen, I almost feel like, in a way, when I think about, the Gulf War, that happened like when I was like in kindergarten, right? The whole thing with OJ, obviously, right? Columbine, 9, right? I feel like while all of those things were happening, there were still enough good things and a certain level of naiveness with me to where I knew that things were happening in the world, but I could still look forward to being a kid, going out and riding my bike, watching Rugrats, having my dad take me to the movies when Michael Jordan was going to be in Space Jam. Like, those were, for me, like, for every bad event, there was a good event. For every memory that I have or documentaries that I watch now about things that happened in the 90s when I was a kid, I can also think about some of the awesome stuff that happened and, some of the things that I really got to enjoy. And one of the big ones was music. A lot of our influences in music today, I was there at the beginning. I remember the first time I heard Destiny's Child. I remember, listen, I know you see on TikTok, you can't summon a generation with one song. You play. If I hear for the 9 and the 2, I don't care if these knees are dead. I am running to the dance floor.
Exactly.
And so I think that, and because of also too, like, you didn't get your news on a phone. When something happened, this did not exist. I didn't get my first cell phone until I got a car in high school, my junior year. And even then, it stayed in the glove box. And so I think that while the world has evolved and technology is something that has also evolved and we have all these technological advances. Like when I really think about Gen Z, it's like, I feel like I've been able to have breaks. Y'all ain't really had no breaks.
No, not at all.
Like, and I also think too, for millennials, especially now, because for the millennials like me that graduated from college in the I graduated right as the housing and financial crisis was happening. I graduated right when I went to school and I've got private loans from predatory lenders. You know what I mean? That I'm probably never going to pay off in my lifetime. So all of those things are happening. And that's why I think, like, for myself, part of me is just like, well, Gen Z just doesn't understand because they're so young. But if I can honestly look at the last 10, 12 years and see that I haven't gotten a break, then that definitely means y'all haven't.
Yeah, and I think, like, first of all, I wish more people would understand that, because sometimes now I feel like people look at Gen Z like we're so disrespectful, we have no work ethic. Like, as Kim Kardashian said, nobody wants to work these days. Get your fucking ass up and work. It's
Of
one of
all
those
people
things where
to
it's
say
like,
that.
yeah, but it's like, let me tell you, I'm gonna be the first, like, no, I don't want to work. Like, I don't, because let me tell you what, the fact that y'all working to live and not, instead of like just working to survive. Like, let me tell you, I don't want to be working my entire life. I don't want to be doing all of this. And so it's, why should I have to put up with all of these things and quote unquote, like, I also think it's one of those things where it's just like, who do we have to impress?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I think about it at least once a day. We're floating on a rock. We're literally floating.
Not the existential crisis question. Come on, Tatum.
No, but like, to me, it makes me feel better about the fact that, you know, it's like, yeah, I have loans, so I'm probably never going to be debt free. But guess what? I'm fucking floating on a rock at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, does this loan matter? No, it doesn't.
Yeah. And I think, and this kind of goes into kind of my next thought on this, is I think one of the best things that Gen Z has made a lot of us millennials realize and recognize is what you just said. Hustle culture is incredibly toxic.
Oh my God.
And listen, when I say Larry and Doretha did anything and everything they could to make sure that me and my sister had a good life, they absolutely did. My dad's a teacher, and he was in DMPS for over 40 years. He still is, actually. And my mom is an educator, and she worked in insurance and things like that. And, you know, my mom and dad always had two jobs. And if there was anything me and my sister could ever want, we absolutely had. Right. And I really love it now that my parents can take a day off and be like, I ain't going to work today. Forget it. Right. But at the same time, for me, I don't want to wait until I'm 65 to enjoy my life.
Exactly.
So what I'm starting to see now is Gen Z, and because of social media, is putting out there that no, like, I'm going to take this day off. You know, I think that there's one gal I work with, and on her email, it literally says, I work from Monday through Friday from 8 to 4. If your email is received after 4 p.m., I will promptly respond within the next business day.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought back to the number of times in my early career where I have gotten emails at 9 o'clock at night. And then the next day when I go to work, having a superior say to me, why didn't you return my email last night? So I really think that, I know for me, what I have learned from Gen Z is that take the time. You are working this amount of time, and really no one should be able to infringe. And also, no one has the right to have all access to you at all times.
Oh, yeah, no, not at all. I am an employee from 8 to 5. So, you know, I was in a sorority in college. Granted, I dropped before I graduated, and looking back on it, stupid decision, but I'm grateful for the fact that I did it, because when I was in a sorority, there's a saying that's like, you're always wearing your letters. So it's like, you can't act a complete fool, because regardless if you have your letters on, everybody knows that you're a part of XYZ sorority fraternity. So don't be going around acting a damn fool, because everybody's going to project it on us. And so it was one of those things where, I mean, I'd like to say pretty much all of my jobs post-college have been at a certain level of like community stature, where there is a certain level of like things that's, there's a certain level expected of me that like isn't compared to a lot of other jobs people have who are my age. And so I'm the first to acknowledge that, like, you know, I can't be acting a fool all the time, because people are going to associate me with my job, with my career, X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, if you see me acting a fool, I guarantee you it's going to be on a weekend, and it's going to be between 9 and 2 a.m.
Right. I'm not on company time.
I'm not on company time. And so it's one of those, And it's one of those things where, like, I tell people all the time, it's like, that's above my pay grade. That's not my job. You don't pay me for that. I'm not going to do that. And I think, I mean, you're saying, like, I don't work all the time. I have 36 days PTO. I max that out every year.
Yeah. As you should.
I sometimes I remind myself where I'm like, you know what? I don't want to work today, so I'm not going to.
I'm going to take the day off.
And that's completely fine. Nobody should be penalizing you for wanting to take a day off. When I take days off, sometimes I'll tell people why, because I'm a yapper and I just share too many things. But 9 times out of 10, it's like, oh, I'm taking next Thursday off. Why? Because I can.
Yeah, and that's another thing is I feel like, and I'm not sitting up here saying, oh, millennials, we don't know what we're doing and Gen Z just always has it right. My thing is that I think that there are things that I have learned now that I wish I would have known at your age. Doesn't necessarily mean that I agree with everything that Gen Z does, but especially like when it comes to work and that self-care and that preservation that you need, that's definitely been my takeaway. I think that if I were to think about the question and what are some of the differences, for me, it's the overshare. And this is a direct product of social media. So I think, and I feel like Gen Z has really mastered this topic, this whole get ready with me, go shopping with me. Oh, look what I bought. I mean, because of that, we have influencer roles. We have now major multi-billion dollar companies are not paying for advertising because you could literally just take a box of stuff, send it to an influencer, and then they will showcase everything for you, all for the fact that it's sponsored. And it's almost like we've gotten to a point, and I feel like with Gen Z, it's, well, I'm just going to show everything, but also too, when I ask some of the kids that I work with, and this is even back when I was at Simpson, well, what do you want to do? Oh, well, I want to go to college and study marketing so I can become an influencer. What? No. Like, oh, well, I'm a gamer, so I'm going to study software engineering, and then I'm going to stream on Twitch and be a gamer. And I'm just like, for me, it's like, I think those are all great things, but for me, it's ultimately, what are you going to do to support yourself? Because to build up that type of following, to get that brand recognition, the amount of time that it takes to do it, you could actually be working a job and supporting yourself to get to that later. You know what I mean? So to me, I feel like this is where the detriment of social media has been to your generation, because for us back in the day, the first couple of days of school at Roosevelt was always a fashion show.
Oh,
because you went and got the freshest fits and you came to school correct.
Exactly.
Now, everybody knows what everybody's wearing because everybody shops at the same place.
That's valid. Yeah.
And so I almost feel bad. And this is really where I wish you guys would have been able to just experience some of those things that I was able to experience pre-social media.
Yeah, I definitely think that I mean, obviously, I feel like a lot of things are a dual-edged sword. I feel like, I'd say that the one thing that I'd say my area of Gen Z can say, I remember when Instagram and Snapchat were invented. Like, I remember in middle school when a girl in my geography class in 7th grade pulled out this little yellow ghost app and was like, oh yeah, you send photos and they expire. Because at that time, they expired in 3 seconds. Like, if you didn't see it in 3 seconds, you were done.
Right.
Like, if you only had 3 seconds, that was it, okay? And I remember being so confused. I was like, what's the point? And I remember thinking, that's stupid, it's not gonna last. A week later, I was on the app, all of my friends were on the app, and Instagram, the same thing. Instagram was so lighthearted and so fun. Everybody posted like 14 times a day. Nobody cared. It was so fun. And so I think a huge thing is like, we've seen the evolution of social media. Like we saw when it was truly like when iFunny was a thing, like we saw that cute side of things. And then by the time that we got into, late middle school, early high school, like when we were in the high school years, like that's when cyberbullying started to become a really big thing. So I feel like from an early age, we got to see both sides of social media.
Right.
And I feel like now it's one of those things where my generation, more so than honestly any other generation, we've chosen to adapt with that in mind rather than just complaining the fact that everything's on social media nowadays. Because it's one of those things where it was like, I mean, okay, yeah, kind of a bummer if you think about it that way, but at the same time, are you going to look at me dead in my face and tell me that you didn't expect this to happen?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Come on now.
Right. So I feel like for me, when Facebook came out, it was only for college kids, right? And then we had MySpace. So it was like you had two, right? You had your Facebook for you and your college friends, and then your MySpace. That's when we were all coding. And listen, some of the stuff that we did on MySpace, I even look back now. Me and my boyfriend were just talking about it, and I was just like, I mean, how was it, when you would log in, when you would get home and then realize you're someone's number 9 and not in their top 8, or how revolutionary it was that Tom from MySpace was everybody's number 1. You know what I mean? And I think for me, it all just started to happen so fast. And I think the big difference is again, I went through my childhood and my adolescence and my high school years without any of this. And then it's starting to really I'm starting to really grasp the fact that technology is really changing. I mean, when I started college, I would do my homework, save it on a floppy disk, take it to the library, and print it. By the time I was a senior, I had a USB drive. So even that little bit of technology completely changed, right? Now I have a Google Doc and it's literally on my phone, and I can just go ahead and upload something and I could send it to wherever I need, and it's done. I think if I were to speak for myself and maybe some millennials, it's just that technology changed so fast, and it just seemed like there was a different app every other day for us to get in contact with people. When again, we started with Facebook, then we had MySpace. Cool. Now there's Instagram. Okay, yeah, I can post some pictures there. Snapchat. Oh, okay, yeah, I can do that one too. And then TikTok. I was anti-TikTok for a very, very long time. But again, now, and then it turned into, oh, you can keep up with friends, to you can get your news, to you can upload videos, to now you're doing advertising on there. And I honestly think for me, again, it happened so rapidly, and then it's kind of like, you're just like, man, like I remember when we didn't have any of this stuff. And if you really wanted to know something, you would just turn on the news at 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Sometimes I do think about like now, because for me personally, one of my biggest pet peeves is just like just general ignorance for like things that you like arguably that you shouldn't be ignorant about, because you have literally so much information at your fingertips. So it's
literally,
what's the point? But with that being said, I do miss the times of just being ignorant to everything unless you wanted to turn on the news. Like I remember like one of my most fond childhood memories is waking up when there was a bunch of snow outside and sitting in front of the news watching the little band at the bottom of the screen going, oh my gosh, I hope my school district says that we're like literally,
no,
like,
seriously,
your parents waking you up going, hey, the news is on, go look to see if you're going to have school today. And you would run out there and you would lay your clothes out just in case you had to get to school really quick. And I feel like nowadays, like that's not a
thing. No,
younger people,
my nephews,
I just don't understand it. But I'd say honestly, I feel like it's like the dating
explain and I'm gonna ask you to explain, because so speaking from my millennial perspective, again, I was with somebody for 17 years, and we met the old-fashioned way at work. You know what I mean? And it was like a summer job thing. And then we cultivated a relationship like that. But at the same time, I remember, and some of my friends are going to be like, Emily, I can't believe we're talking about this. I remember back in the day when you would go to your friend's house and then call the cute boy out of the school directory, and you'd be like, okay, cool, just shut up. Like, I'm going to pretend I'm not here. And so then, you would ask, or even like be on three-way, which I don't even think you could, well, yeah, you can technically still do it. But regardless, being on three-way and telling your friend to shut up so you can ask if the boy, if they liked you, know, that was a thing. But I feel like when I got divorced and I started dating, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna get on this dating app. And I had heard from my friends. Emily, don't do it. And I'm just like, bro. It can't be that bad. And then it was like, I literally opened up and, oh, this boy is nice. He's talking to me. Okay. Oh yeah, how are you doing? I'm fine. Dick pic. It's just like, okay, guys, like this is like way too much. So please enlighten on dating, because I don't think you guys get that. You guys don't get I met this guy at work. I met him on social media. Like, please explain.
So my last boyfriend, so not my current boyfriend, my last boyfriend, I met him on Hinge. Okay, let me tell you. Like, anybody that meets anybody off of Hinge, it ended terribly. He cheated on me with like 4 people. It's terrible. It's not Gucci, whatever. But like I also think a huge thing about my generation, because of like the internet and everything, the way that the hookup culture surrounding my generation is absolutely insane. Because like you were saying before, if you didn't know them, you were never going to like meet, you were never going to hook up with them, you're never going to meet them, quote unquote, you know what I mean? But like I remember being in high school, it's like, okay, well, you know, I'm feeling some type of way. I can just look up the whole football team on Instagram right now, message one of them, see what they're doing, shoot my shot. And so we got so comfortable with, I remember being in high school and hearing about people getting busted sleeping in the porta potty on the field. Like y'all were doing, they're meeting and they meet people everywhere. And I don't think that people are like comfortable meeting each other in person anymore. But I will say that my generation, via social media, everything involves the internet these days. I've seen on TikTok, a lot of people are trying to meet people in person nowadays. Like my current boyfriend, he works with my best friend. She was like, oh my gosh, I think that you guys would work really well together. I think you guys would like mesh really well. And guess what? We do. And it's like, that's crazy. Because a year and a half ago, I'd be like, if you don't meet them on an app, where are you meeting them? Like,
where
you
are
just
you meeting them?
Out in real life. Like, how do you do that? How do you do that? But then I think about it, it's like I've gone to strangers' houses to hook up with them. Like after talking to them for literally 6 hours. Like, how am I not dead? How am I not dead?
Listen.
Sometimes I think about it and I'm like, you dumb bitch. Like you
You know what? You know what's crazy is I feel like a millennial's equivalent to that is the day of AOL chat rooms.
Oh my God.
When I tell you, like when I look back being 12, 13 years old, having that one family computer in the house, and being 13, 14 years old, my sister was away at college. So Olivia was living in New Orleans at the time. Mom and dad are working. It's Friday night. I have nothing to do because I'm in the 8th grade. And the fact that me and my friends would be on the phone and be in chat rooms, we fast forward 10 years and How to Catch a Predator is a thing. You know what I mean? So it's almost like same circumstance, different timing.
Do you remember Kick?
I do not. Oh Lord, this is the education that I didn't know I needed.
Oh my God! So Kick was this like messaging app that was a thing in when I was in middle school. So oh my God, I'm not good with years. Middle school. So I started high school 2020, and so I was at like 2012 through 2013, 20. So Kick happened in that time frame, and this was like pre-Instagram, pre-Snapchat. So it was like basically like you basically just had like Tumblr, Wattpad, and Kick basically was, and Facebook was basically all that you had at this point in time for social media. And I remember Kick was, you could find people from literally anywhere. I honestly, it's kind of like the first WhatsApp, I'd say. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what WhatsApp is. Yeah.
Kind of like that vibe. And it is like a generational, like every Gen Z knows. You got groomed on Kick. The first strange male penis that I saw was sent to me on Kick. The things that I saw, like every girl that I knew was dating like an arguably, he's probably like a 25, 37-year-old man on Kick, like worried that he's gonna, like he said that he's gonna kill himself if I don't text him back before 6 p.m. And like I'm at the dinner table, literally, like this man's about to kill himself, and my mom's telling me to eat her fucking pork chops. Like I have bigger things on my mind, Mom. What are you doing?
That is literally our experience in AOL chat rooms.
And it was
it's wild. It is truly wild. And again, this is what happens as technology evolves. So my AOL was your Kick. You know what I mean? And it's so crazy how, again, the generations, we are talking so much about our differences, but literally we experience the same things. They were just different. And a lot of the stuff is based around technology. That is such a wild thing to think of. And it's really also interesting too when you talk about dating and hookup culture and everything like that, because I was told by a lot of my friends, oh, Bumble is where like the good guys are. Listen, I've got a friend, she met her guy on Bumble. They are absolutely adorable together. Love them, was in their wedding. They just had their first baby together. And like for them, that is a rock star Bumble A++ relationship. I met a guy on Bumble that after 6 months of dating completely ghosted me. And I'm just like, this is cool. And then it's so funny because I had friends, Emily, stay off Tinder. Tinder is no, don't do it. Literally been with my boyfriend for over a year, met him on Tinder. Like,
oh my gosh, I got banned from Tinder in college. I got flagged for prostitution. Venmo on my bio.
Tatum, that's a conversation. Listen, okay, so we're gonna do an episode. I'm putting it down. We're gonna do it on Black girls dating in Iowa and using these damn apps, because that is going to be a phenomenal episode. Because as someone that I was 36 when I left my now ex-husband, and I got on the apps, and it got to a point where I literally just had to hide them on my phone and turn off notifications. One story, and then we'll get back into the topic. So a good friend of mine came to visit, right? And so, and this is my friend from California. Her name is Ellie. And so she was here for 2 weeks, and we were going to go to the Bills Chiefs game. While she was here, the guy that ghosted me, he bought me the tickets. So Thanks. And so she was here and she was like, yo, do you want to go to the Bears Vikings game up in Minnesota? Because it's a 4-hour drive. I was like, girl, say less, buy the tickets. So we go up there, right? Did not know that Tinder picks up your location and it doesn't matter. So it's just like, so if I'm here in Des Moines, I have Tinder on and it says 50 miles, it's going to be 50 miles from where I am, right? If I go to another state, it's going to pick up where I am 50 miles and there it is, right? Mm-hmm. Sitting at that game, my likes on Tinder and like my matches went from 20 to like 3 and the DMs were going annoyed, okay? And I'm just like, how is this okay? And how could I possibly sift through all of these men at a football game? Like,
a game out of it.
This is wild to me. And a friend told me later, Emily, oh my God, I should have told you to turn off your location. Because otherwise, I mean, and it wasn't like, hey, how you doing? It was, do you want to meet up later for drinks? Hey, do you want to hook up? And I'm just like, well, damn, like all you know is my first name. You know what I mean? And one of my friends later told me though, that this is the culture now. This is just how it is. And it's really crazy because whether you are a boomer, whether you're Gen X, whether you are millennial or Gen Z, the dating scene is in the apps. And that is like the one thing that we can all agree on generationally is that it is trash.
It's trash. And the fact that and that people still continue to use it.
Yeah.
Blows my mind. Absolutely. Creating new apps is going to fix the problem.
Oh, it's like, there's so many. There's so many. And then some of them you're having to pay for now. And it's, oh my God. Okay.
Yes.
So this has been a really fascinating conversation though. And I really think too that it's going to be really interesting to see the differences between Gen X and millennial, and then the difference between like baby, boomers. So I think in the future, I definitely want to do an episode where I can get one of each of us and see what that conversation would be like. So, but as we're wrapping up this conversation, which has been fantastic, and y'all, this is going to be ongoing. We have to have Tatum back on the show. It has to be. So we've talked a lot about just like our differences and then some similarities that we have. So I'm going to answer the question for Gen Z. I want you to answer the question. What is something that you want millennials to know about Gen Z, about your generation?
I'd say, I feel like there's so many things, but I'd say like the biggest thing is that, we are not we're not enemies, man. Like we need to band together for the betterment of society. But with that being said, I also think that like Gen Z's been holding a really large mirror up towards millennials, and millennials haven't really been liking what they've been seeing for the most part. And I think the biggest thing, like how I'd say that that's being able to be seen now, is through the children that millennials are starting to have, like Gen Alpha. Like we're seeing how these kids are being raised. So we're kind of seeing like the effect of millennials growing up with how they're raising their children. And I feel like the biggest thing is like, we're not enemies. Like we're not trying to like beef with you. We're just trying to like show you what you're doing. And I'd also say like the bigger thing is that like, don't discredit us because you don't think that we're like, because of our age. Like it sounds so stupid, but like it is such a big thing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of millennials don't like Gen Z just because we're younger, and because like I think just a lot of people refuse to admit that, like we talked about it earlier, we haven't had it easy like growing up. Like it hasn't been the easiest. So like how about instead of just beefing with each other, we just like lock arms and like do the damn thing. And I think that like a lot can be learned from Gen Z's on the millennials' behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd like to sit here and say, and it's like, and I would love to learn from a lot of the millennials, but it's like, you guys have been older than us. I've been seeing you for a long
Yeah.
time.
Right.
I've learned as much as I can from you. Now is the time for you to sit back, learn
Right.
from us. And because, hell, half the time I'd say, I'll talk to millennials at first and then they think that I'm dumb. And then 20 minutes later, they're like, damn, this little girl knows what the fuck she's talking about. And it's like,
Right.
yeah, I'm trying to make everybody's life easier. Just
Right.
let me be in charge for 15 fucking minutes, please.
Right.
Please.
Right.
That would
Right.
be so much better.
Right. And I will say, so Gen Alpha is between 20 and 20. So this will be the last year for Gen Alpha, and then we're into the next generation. So that's fascinating.
That's horrifying.
To answer the question in the inverse of what is something I want Gen Z to know about millennials. I fully am aware that we can learn from a younger generation. When I was your age, at the age of 23, 24, I had Gen Xers telling me the exact same thing. And what was even worse, I had Gen Xers and boomers telling me. A lot of more and more boomers are retiring and getting out of the workforce. But for me, it was almost like they were always like your senior level, right? I think that with Gen Z, I think for as much as they have taught us in my generation, I also think that there's still a lot that they can learn because of just what we talked about. A lot of the things that you guys have gone through, we went through it. It just looked different. So kick. Right?
Yeah.
So we just how we get news. And yes, you guys went through 9/11 and the housing crisis and things like that. But I think for us, you also were sold the go to college, make something of yourself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we were told all of those things because those positions that those boomers and those Xers had, they said that they could be ours and we would make more money. And it never happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that sometimes millennials get lost in this idea that we were the generation that hasn't pushed anything forward, when in actuality, we're actually the generation that gets blamed for a lot of stuff. Like I remember a few years ago, I think it was actually during the 2016 election, and there was like this call out. So, 2016, I just turned 30. I remember Paul Rudd was in this commercial, and it was like, hey, millennials, be cool, go out there and vote. And, and I was just like, well, wait a damn minute. I've been voting since 2004. Okay. You aren't talking to me.
Yeah.
We have been out here. Like at this point, we have back paying and 401ks that are invested at 6% with matching from our companies. Like, you can't be talking to me right now, And I also think too that even now I've heard a couple of times where it's like, well, millennials don't want to vote. And it's just like, I can understand why that is problematic, but you also have to take into account we have been voting and we are still not seeing the return on our investment. You guys told us that the return on our investment of us getting degrees was going to be better paying jobs, higher wages. We would be able to afford homes and things like that. Like a lot of us can't do any of that.
Yeah, and see,
you know what I mean?
It's the thing where you guys are just now coming to that realization. In my generation, I recognized that shit in high school.
You've been seeing it, yeah.
I'm never going to be able to afford a house. I'm never going to be able to afford to pay off all of my college loans. I'm never going to be able to do all of these things. So let me tell you what, I'm gonna just ride the wave right now.
Yeah, and I also think too, I don't necessarily think that it's that we're just now realizing it. I think what it is that, and I can probably speak to this personally, is that we were so happy with the progress that we saw when Obama was elected.
Yeah.
We were so happy to see a lot of the progress and the progression and things like that. Like I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I moved away from Iowa. I was gone for almost 10 years. And when I left Iowa, we were in a really awesome, progressive blue area. And when I came home in 2018, we had a very Republican governor. We had a very Republican state Senate and state House of Representatives. This guy named Steve King was just wreaking havoc all over the country and making us all look terrible.
Yes, Steve.
And then, we endorse Donald Trump. And then we do all these things. And then we have one of the highest death rates for COVID and all these things. And it's just like, this isn't what I grew up with. Yeah. And moving forward, then it was just like, okay, cool. So we get a new president, we get Joe Biden, even though he's incredibly old and been in politics for way too long. But it was just like, okay, cool. So things are going to start getting better, right? No, they're not. So I really think that for a lot of millennials, especially ones that are staying up to date on things. And also a lot of my friends, especially that have had children and their children are young.
Yeah.
A lot of it is, okay, cool. You guys said you were going to make it better for us so we can have it better for our kids. That's not happening. And now we're angry. And now we're actually, and the crazy thing is that we've been wanting to do things, but you guys haven't let us because you've told us you're too young. Well, I'm almost 40 now. So tell me, you know what I mean? So I would just say, like, to Gen Z, it's just like, I think on the surface, you guys don't really think that we're doing anything or that we don't care. But also, I think a lot of where we are in society now is being put on blame on us, when really the people that are in power now have literally been, they've been hijacking it for so long, and we haven't been able to do anything positive.
Oh, and I think you're very right in saying that.
Yeah. So, well, Tatum, this was a great conversation. And it's funny, you guys. So, like, with all of my interviewees, I send questions, and I was just like, it's going to be probably like a real casual conversation, whatever. And I just feel like with every conversation that I have, I learn a little bit more, and I just like feel like I have a better understanding of the topic, right? So I'm really happy that we didn't necessarily like push pull and pick apart our generations and say, well, this is your fault. Well, this is your fault. It was. Oh wait, y'all did that too? Oh my God, so did we?
Yeah, like finding common ground. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because we can all agree that, like, it kind of sucks out here. So, like, how about instead of fighting each other, how about we find common ground so that we can fight the real people together?
That part right there. And I really hope that for anyone that listens to this episode specifically, it's just really think about those gaps.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those gaps, if we really start to kind of understand where everyone is kind of coming from and just how we all were raised and we grew up in the time period that we were in, there's really not much. I mean, there is difference, but yeah,
but it's not as stark as I think everybody makes it out to be like. And I feel like, if anything, the biggest stark difference is just how integral technology has been to both of our upbringings. Like, even if you look at my upbringing compared to like kids who are in college now, I'm probably not going to agree with a lot of the things that they're talking about. Like, I went back to Simpson last year for a lecture. And I talked to some students and I was like, damn, like, okay, all right. I would not have expected that. Like, I would not have heard that 3 years ago on this campus. And yet here I am hearing you say it. Okay.
And I will tell you, that's exactly how I felt when I met you in 2018. And I was just like, oh, these kids are, they're gonna burn it down. Like, I don't think they playing, like
literally.
You know what I mean? But again, I think that as we all get older and we all start to do different things and recognize other things, it's kind of like it's almost like you have almost like that, just that much more of an appreciation of where you were at that age.
Yeah.
And then, the next thing you know, you're going to be almost 40 and talking to someone that's 23 and you're just like, wow, okay, I get it. I'm picking up what you're putting down there. I like that. Yeah. Or how it is now, especially like with my nephews, when they ask me, about like growing up in the 90s or what they like to say is the late 1900s, which I just think is really rude.
God.
Yeah, they are lethal. They do
that makes me feel bad. Like, I don't like that, because even though I was born in 2000, like, I mean, you were there. It was a lot of the same shit. It was a lot of the same shit for like the first 5 years, okay? It was a lot of the same shit. So I hate when people be shitting on the 90s for. Like, 90s babies will understand. Bitch, 90s babies,
they get it, right?
Thank God.
Because, I mean, good Lord, when I was in the year 2000, I was 14. So, definitely get it. Absolutely. So, well, Tatum, this was an amazing conversation. And again, I love seeing all the things that you're doing right now. I just get so happy when I see my Simpson kids out here in the world doing the thing. So,
doing all the things.
Yes. So tell the people where they can find you, how they can follow you, all of that good stuff.
Gosh. Yes. So my Instagram is just tatum.renee, C with 2 E's, because people who put A's in Renee are weird.
Okay.
But my TikTok is fatty.thickums.
Okay. Yes.
The fun COVID times when everybody.
And she be on there with her bonnet and telling it like it is, and I'm very appreciative of it. That's awesome. Yes. Yeah. And I will be sure to put your information in the show notes so everyone can find you. Tatum, thank you again. This was.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It was so nice to like see you and talk to you. I feel like it's been. I mean, I guess it has been almost 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it has. It has. But we keep up on social media and all of those things. And again, I'm definitely gonna have you back on the podcast because that dating one, we need to talk about that.
That'll
100%.
have to be one where we come together in person with a bottle of wine.
Yes. Get one or two other girlies, and yes, we're gonna have the conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll have to pull Piscazzi and Corey in. We'll put both of the girls in.
Oh God. Well, no. We have to make it fair. We need at least one other millennial.
Yes.
And another Gen Zer. We have to make it fair. We have to make it fair. So, all right, guys. So I'm going to go ahead, take a quick break. I'll come back with the reflection, and then we'll end the podcast for this one. So I'll be back. All right. Well, another fantastic episode, another great interview. Big shout out and thank you again to Tatum for taking the time and speaking with me. I think, I already said it on this episode that I love seeing students that I have previously worked with really thriving in their new positions and just doing some really awesome things. I mean, you heard in her introduction, she has worked on a few different political campaigns here in the city. She's a board member for the Roosevelt High School Foundation. She's currently working for the Des Moines Symphony and Academy. I mean, when you see students doing well in school and then they're doing well in life afterwards, that's always such a good feeling to see those things. But to kind of reflect a little bit on the conversation that her and I had, again, she's Gen Z, I'm a millennial. And I think the biggest takeaway that I had from this conversation is probably something that generations have been feeling up until this point, obviously, is that we have experienced similar things. They've just been wrapped up in different packages. So when we were talking about like the concept of work, right? She had said, it seems like people think that my generation, that we don't want to work. And it's like, no, actually we do want to work, but we also want to see the fruits of our labor. And also we want to enjoy ourselves. We want to enjoy our life. Like we don't want to be living to work. We just want to work to live. So that way, like my 40 hours is it. And I think that that's really important because for me and my generation and how I grew up, because I also think how you grew up really speaks to what areas of the generation you were in. It was basically, if you wake up, you need to be making money. You need to be figuring out a way to support yourself. One of the things that I was taught at a very young age from my parents was you need to have some type of hustle. You need to be doing something on the side. So that way you're always getting money and you're basically never going to be broke, right? But what I really started to realize in all those times that like I had a second job or I was doing something else, I remember, oh my God, I did everything. Like I was making cake pops for a while. I was making smash cakes for people. I was doing all of these things. And what I started to notice was that the more I was doing all of these different things, and yes, I was getting money, but the more burnt out I got. And the more I didn't want to do those things. I used to make cake pops and I used to do a really good job at that. But at the same time, I got burnt out from that really, really fast. And you couldn't get me to bake a cake, let alone to form those little balls, dip them in chocolate, and sell cake pops again. I will never, ever do that again. Honestly, the last time I made cake pops was for my friend Dion's baby shower. And her son is turning 5 this year. So that goes to show I am not with that anymore. But I think the other thing too that I really enjoyed about our conversation was identifying and recognizing that between our two generations, we haven't had no damn breaks. And you could say that for everybody, but when we specifically look at the major things that have happened just in US history, okay? And we do have some things that happened globally as well. But we had 9/11. We had a housing and a financial crisis, birth of social media, cyberbullying, a Trump presidency, pandemic, a war, and we're trying to navigate life and do all of these things and also be the people that our parents and our teachers told us that we could be and have the house and get married and have kids and do all of those things, all the while really recognizing that that idea of the American dream was sold to us and it had been unchanged for the decades prior to it. The American dream looks so different now for my generation and for Tatum's generation than it did for my parents. For me, my American dream is having a little bit of disposable income so that way I can go and afford a pedicure every couple of weeks. And that's kind of it. like for me, the American dream is being able to just pay all of my bills and not have to rob Peter to pay Paul. That's what it is for me now. It's not the same. Tatum said something really poignant in that, she realized a long time ago she's probably never going to be able to buy a house or pay off her student debt. And that is a very real realization for a lot of us. And I think instead of older generations looking down on us, telling us that we need to work more and we need to do more and we need to make more money, which don't get me wrong, making more money is great, but I don't want to make more money to pay more bills. Okay. There's a big thing. Like if I want to make more money, I want to make more money so I can play, so I can go on vacation, so I can buy more diamond paintings, so I can go to dinner at different restaurants with my friends and just really enjoy life. Right. I really think that older generations, what they kind of stop needing to do is comparing us with them, because in the times that they were growing up were completely different than where we are. So like, perfect example, my parents being in their 30s in the 90s is totally different than me being in my 30s in 2020s now. It's not the same. We are not the same. So there's really no sense in really like comparing the two, if I'm being completely honest. Another thing, and I had said this and also to speak through the things that we haven't had a break from. I had a couple of other dishonorable mentions that I didn't mention, but that would include mass shootings at schools, concerts, movie theaters, malls, and grocery stores, and the unjustified killing of Black people by the police. Those are also some other things that we have definitely had to cycle through and had to go through. And then that's not even talking about this phenomenon in our culture of recognizing toxic behavior, especially when we think about the reasons why the Me Too movement exists, reasons why, Black Lives Matter exists. We've had so many different changes and shifts in our culture in what we deem as acceptable and problematic. Those are all growing pains, and those are all things that we are still going through. So again, me in my 30s, comparison to my parents and their generation, totally different, completely different. The other thing too that I did want to mention, and me and Tatum talked about this kind of early on when we talked about generational differences, is the concept that no one has the right to have 24/7 access to you. When I say I am going on PTO, I have adopted the same acronym that people are leveraging now when talking about PTO, and it does not mean paid time off. It means prepare the others. I get a very nice amount of PTO days every year. And I also think it's kind of weird that I have to earn them, but whatever. I use my PTO. I am not carrying over days. I am not saying, oh, well, I need to be here, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I for damn sure ain't canceling my PTO for nobody. So I think, again, hustle culture has taught us and has ingrained, especially like in my millennial generation, that we always have to be on. And whatever the job wants, the job has to come first. The job has to come before family, it has to come before friends, and it has to come before self. And Tatum mentioned something about how she was like an oversharer a lot of the times. When I tell you that was like me, my first like 10 years in the working world. If I was going on PTO, I always gave an answer as to why I'm doing PTO. And it wasn't until I got into my current position where my supervisor, I was like, hey, I want to get this day off. And she was like, okay, cool, I'll approve it. And I was like, because, so-and-so. And she was like, I do not need to know this. Like, I just need to know that you're not going to be here so I can prepare the others. And ever since then, I had kind of like done that like here and there, but now it is an absolute stand. I do not, if I have earned the time and I'm taking the time off, you don't need to know what I'm doing. Just know I ain't here. Like that's really what it is. And I've really had to train myself to not feel sorry for not giving an explanation. And when you think about it, no one knows me an explanation when they take time off. I just know they're not here, and this is what I have to do now. So I thought that that was another thing. And really, again, kind of like what I said in the show, in the interview, these are all of the things that I had to learn. And I learned them from Gen Z. Because one thing you're not going to do with Gen Z is you're not going to overstep your boundary and attempt to get information that's not privy to you. And it shouldn't be like that. So overall, you know, the two generations finding common ground is important, and we're going to have to, because Gen Alpha, they are here and they are an interesting generation. As I kind of said on the podcast, my youngest nephew is a Gen Alpha, and actually my oldest nephew is on the tail end of Gen Z. So it's definitely a lot of different things to really think about and how we're going to move forward. But I think also for me, for someone that does work with students that are in Gen Alpha and getting them ready to go to college, this is a really good reminder for me in that these kids are going through stuff that even I don't know about. But for a lot of the stuff they're going through, it's going to be more important for me to listen to understand as opposed to listen and reacting. I remember when I was their age, and one of the things that I really could not stand about talking to grown-ups was their insistent need to attempt to tell me what it is and how it should be, as opposed to just listening to what I had to say. If you have an experience to leverage, please do so, right? But other than that, shut up and just let me talk. So having a conversation with Tatum, getting a better understanding of the differences within our generation is going to help me not only work with that younger generation, but also help me kind of build some bridges with folks that are not only older, but also younger than me. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed that episode. I know I did. And Tatum she's a hoot. So I'm definitely going to have her back on. Something definitely needs to be said about the dating game and how it went from how it was like when I met my ex-husband to now with dating profiles and everything like that, because I got stories. Anyway, thank you so much though for tuning into this week's episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Next week we will be having a very awesome and dynamic conversation with one of my dear friends, Dr. Wanaki Carr. She is a practicing OBGYN and the only Black woman in the field in the state of Iowa. So please be sure to tune in next week as we talk with her about her experience and about why it's important to advocate for not only reproductive health, but also reproductive health of women of color. So that is all that I have for you this week. Again, thank you so much for joining. If you want more Black Girl Iowa, please be sure to go to my website, www.blackgirliowa.com, where I will be putting up a new blog post about diamond art. So I know I've been getting some questions in my DMs about what is this super nerdy thing that you like, Emily, and we want to know more. So I will be writing that up. The other thing I do want to tell you guys is I will be putting up a blog post about merch. My merch samples are coming this week, and I'm currently working on pricing, so cannot wait to showcase that to you guys. So those two blog posts are coming up. If you want to follow me on social media, you absolutely can at Black Girl Iowa. And don't forget, new episodes every Monday at 11 a.m. unless posted otherwise. Again, thank you so much. This is Emily with Black Girl Iowa signing off. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.